So let's start with you, former city school board member. Reverend Wayland, what would you make of that display we saw on Tuesday? We're going to show some highlight, I guess lowlights is a better word, of just no one had no control from the very beginning. I was disappointed in the school board and the parents, and no discussion really of the kids.
It was a hot mess. It was an embarrassment. Yet, to me, it was not surprising because I have sat in one of those seats, and it is not the behavior of the unruly crowd that disturbed me that much because I've seen that over the years. What disturbed me was the behavior of a few of the members of the school board. I don't think I've ever seen that many people in elected position on one elected body demonstrate such, for lack of a better word, ignorance. And I don't mean it in a pejorative sense. I just mean ignorance in the sense that they act like they don't know how to comport themselves. They act like they don't know what the basic rules of decorum are, and they obviously did not know how to go about what they were trying to do, which is come up with an immediate termination of a contracted superintendent. I've never seen anything on that level.
Well, I know you're going to talk more about it later in the segment, just to give people a little tip about one of your choices. But I think we would all agree with you on that. So let's jump ahead here. We're talking about possible state involvement now, Susan. Representative Mark White of Memphis has said he'd like to get all sides together in a room to avoid the state getting involved. What do you think is going to happen with that before this January 14th meeting when they're going to take up the vote again about whether to fire her?
Well, I don't ever recall a state legislator becoming a mediator overnight. I'm not sure that that's the role of Mark White, but if he can call them all into a room and find some kind of peace, that's great. What struck me, though, the other night was there was no leadership on that panel, on the school board. Exactly. There was absolutely no leadership, not from the chairman, not from anybody who could step forward and lead them out of the chaos. And they clearly have no idea about Robert's Rules of Order, which are fundamental to any government meeting. I mean, look, I don't know whether Dr. Feagins is doing a good job or not. I mean, we won't know because she's not going to talk to us and tell us what she's doing. But simply put, this is a new school board, basically, and it's burdened with some enormous egos. And, you know, their behavior the other night, and I say this seriously, makes Wanda Halbert's management skills look pretty admirable. I mean, they were an embarrassment to this community. And there are two things that struck me. One, little attention to our children and how do we better educate our kids. And the other one, if I were president or CEO of a business or company thinking about moving my business to Memphis, and I read about this school board and what they did, I wouldn't for a second ask my employees to move to Memphis and put their kids in public schools. It would be a deal breaker for me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was deplorable, Otis, and we've all talked about and agree with that. Where do you think the school board needs to go next? And do you think this January 14th vote anything's going to come from that? Or are the 5 votes still going to hang tight, do you think, to fire?
That's a good question. I'm hearing that the 5 votes are digging in their heels and very well may hang together and try to do this. But if they do, they're going to incur the wrath of the state, I believe. I believe we are looking at the very real possibility of a state takeover. If Mark White can't get them in a room and get any agreements here, I believe the governor would be amenable to this, and the other leadership in the legislature would be amenable to this. So I think the school board, which I agree, the school board right now is constituted, has a lot of people on it who are inexperienced and are not really listening to things. But there's enough blame to go around for all of this. The superintendent, as you said, Susan, has not communicated very well, certainly hadn't communicated with the media very well at all. And so everybody shares some blame on this, including the voters who came out with 13% turnout in August and elected some of these school board members. So I don't know where things are going to head in January, but it's not looking pretty at all.
One thing that gets kind of overlooked, though, is the accusations against her are fairly serious.
Very
and I feel like the school board just failed miserably at making that case
Absolutely.
to the public. Might have even calmed down some of those parents that night if they had led with that. Instead, they decided to have invited the public comments first, which turned into the free-for-all that we all saw.
Yeah, they should have been methodical and laid that out even long before they would have a meeting to talk about ouster and get that out into the public sphere in a lot of different ways.
I made it a point to read the resolution after the meeting. And the use of certain words like she's guilty of certain violations.
Get specific.
She's guilty of certain things. Yeah, that's not typically the kind of language you would use in a legal document like that resolution. Now, here's what is happening. I don't know this for certain, but somebody on the inside of the school board administration, some long-termers, long-timers within the administration, they might have some information, some damning information, but they're trying to throw rocks and hide their hands and remain anonymous. And they're feeding incomplete information. I'm just guessing. They're feeding, based on my personal experience, they're feeding incomplete information to sitting members of the board and trying to egg them on and instigate and get them to go out and fire the superintendent without them ever having to identify themselves. Well, that's not going to work.
So they chose to delay this vote until mid-January to give Dr. Feagins a chance to defend herself and explain herself. She says she's going to have her attorneys do that for her. What message do you think that sends?
Well, I mean, she might have to hide behind an attorney. It looked pretty nasty to me. And if she wants to bring her attorneys to stand there and defend her, she wants to bring anybody to stand there and defend her. She has every right to do that. But I have to tell you something. We've talked many times on this program about school vouchers. And I know your position is you're against them, and I sit in the middle. I'm not too sure I'm in favor of them, and you're for them.
100%.
But I got to tell you, I think I'm like most people who really could go one way or the other. This one leans me towards Reverend Whalem's position of being in favor of school vouchers. My God, I mean, if I had young children, I think I would have to think really twice where I'd want to put them in school. And if I didn't have the finances, which many people in this community don't, to put them in private school, then school vouchers would look awfully good to me.
I'm with you. I have been on the fence on this, and I'm really thinking it makes a lot of sense for a lot of parents who don't have a choice.
Let me hurry and add that I am for the governor issuing some kind of edict which would affect a takeover.
Well, there's one thing that has gotten lost in this week of chaos. I think it was on Thursday. The state's report card came out, the letter grades that they have started to institute. Memphis-Shelby County Schools actually made some significant gains. There were a lot more A's in the schools. I think it might have even doubled. And nobody was talking about that because of this chaos. And that, the credit for that obviously goes to the teachers, but also to, I think, the former superintendent, Tony Williams and Angela Whitelaw, who was one of the top people over there at the time. But nobody's talking about that because of the chaos that this board and the whole system is involved in.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. We'll be talking about this in the new year. I have